This morning, I saw this video. It's a quote from a film. It's like a little thing that happens in a film, in Good Will Hunting. And essentially the therapist is telling this lad that it's not his fault for the abuse he got as a kid. And now he's turning out now, and it's not his fault. And all these behaviours, essentially, the therapist has recognised all these behaviours are reactions because it's protecting yourself as a kid. And what he keeps saying is, it's not your fault. And when I first watched the film, and when I first saw that, God, did it, it made me cry. It didn't half make me cry, and make me think, God, yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. And I was watching it this morning, and I felt all those same emotions as when I first watched that, maybe 2 or 3, might have even been longer, 2 or 3 years ago, when I needed that, when I was first sort of exposed to that saying, it's not your fault. Because previous to that, it's always my fault. That's just what my own thoughts are telling me. That you are in control of what you do and what happens to you. And everything that's happened to you as a kid or whatever, you growing up and things you experienced, it's all your fault, or it's your responsibility. So when I heard that for the first time, cried, and I realised maybe it's not. And that was a realisation as a kid, or when I was younger, that maybe don't be so hard on yourself. But listening to it this morning, it's still, like I said, it still brought up those emotions, but it felt different. It was I almost had to force it. I almost had to repeatedly think about it and have it on my mind to even feel those emotions again. And one of the things I want to say today is, one of your priorities, or what I think, if I was to do life again, or what I'd do earlier than I did a year ago, is I'd sort out all my past problems, all the things that hold me back from my past, things I'm caught up on in my head. Things like not feeling good enough, things like not feeling loved, what else? Things like just no self-respect, really, no self-love at all. Because I didn't think I was deserving of it, really. There's loads of things, but since ayahuasca, which I still have to film a video on explaining all that, but it'll be a long one, and I have to sit down and think about that one to make sure I articulate it correctly, because it means so much to me, the experience that I had. And one of the things ayahuasca did for me was I went through all these past problems that I'd some created in my head, and most of it was as a child. I went back to these memories as a child, and these memories that made me sad, and I essentially fixed them, and I looked upon them in sort of adult eyes, and I think everyone needs to do that. Everyone should do that, really, because there's a lot of baggage that people have that they don't even realise. That for me, once you pass them, you sort of you see how much they were holding you back. You see how much they were on your mind and how much energy they actually take up, and how much wasted energy that you actually have in life, that things that make you tired, things that make you have no energy, you find it, me, I always thought I found it hard to stick at things. Sometimes I found it hard to stick at things. Most of the time, stuff that I didn't care about too much, but you hear that it's meant to be good for you, so you do it. But I would never stick to them because I never truly cared or believed. And other times the main problem I had, and have still if I'm honest, is starting something. For me, it's a huge step starting something, like filming these videos. To start actually filming was quite a big step. To actually go and do ayahuasca was a big step. Another thing for me was to go traveling for a month on my own. That was a big step. For me, I usually, especially in the past, I usually thought of things for a year or two before I ever acted upon it. Like this, it took me a year to post, so it's the theme. That's sort of my distance of acting upon something that scares me and is stepping out my comfort zone, something big anyway. And I'd say even though this filming and posting took me a year, it didn't take as long to start filming. I think it probably took me a month, maybe. I don't fully remember, but I assume it took me about a month, maybe less. And I think that's because I didn't have any of this almost baggage, any of this wasted energy on thinking about things and thinking about how maybe I would have to deal with this, or the consequences of this, or my own emotions getting in the way. For instance, if I decided to do this 2 years ago, I'd be thinking more about what I'm actually saying and how it's worth nothing. I mean, that's the point. It wouldn't even come to my head to even do this, because it'd be like, why would you do that? One, you've got nothing to say. Two, you've got all these things in your head that you're definitely not saying because you think you're crazy. You think you're so out of pocket with it all, but there's no way it's useful. You're wrong. You're completely wrong. There's no point saying anything when you're completely wrong. It's pointless, it's useless, it's got no value to it. And obviously until you sort of develop value for yourself, for your actual existence, when you create value and say, yeah, this matters to at least me. So you have that foundation compared to, when I haven't dealt with all my past issues and dealt with not having self-worth, you've got such a massive hurdle before even contemplating this, before any of the hurdles that I've gone through in the year with this. I can't even contemplate, how do I articulate my words onto a camera? How do I film? What mic do I get? How do I edit things into clips? How do I post on social media? How do I keep my creative thoughts flowing? None of that can even be addressed, which are such basic principles for what I'm doing. None of that can even be addressed because I'm dealing with issues in my own head that doesn't even create the thought to do this. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you have baggage, if you have stuff in your head that you just can't get past, if you've got these negative tendencies to act a certain way because you're insecure, or because because you've got a childish mind in terms of you're still affected by things that you haven't got over as a kid. And I think if I remember correctly, the first time I even contemplated or learnt about this was when I listened to a podcast with a fella called Gabor Mate, if that's even how you pronounce his name, and he was talking about trauma in children and how children take things personally. And he was talking about his mum, and he grew up in the war, and how, you know, he was Jewish, and how he weren't Jewish, but it was something like his mother would have been believed to be a Jew. They would have thought she was a Jew, so she wasn't safe, so she had to leave a kid, which was him, and she had to, so he was safe and they had to leave. And then as a child, he's taken that personally, like he's not wanted anymore, whereas, you know, as an adult, you understand that that's not the case. She loves him that much that she's trying to keep him safe. And when I first learned that, and he's got an amazing book and he's amazing on podcast, I do gravitate to his opinion and to what he's saying. But when I first learned it makes sense, and applying it to my situation, you say, that's why it's not your fault. It's a lot of the things I've had a lot of realizations that I didn't even know why I was feeling that way. So why, when I was younger, did I not feel loved? I have no idea. No one did anything specifically that made me feel that way. You know, nothing stands out as this massive traumatic experience where I don't feel loved. You know, and until you start dealing with things from the past, and you're dealing with your baggage and your traumas that you haven't got over, you've got no chance of even figuring it out. So once I'd done ayahuasca, and after that, you know, I've got over all that, and I feel great, and I feel loved. And then I figure out, or I might have figured it out with ayahuasca, I'm not sure, but I figured out that, you know, I worry that much, or I did worry that much, that and have this sort of closed off mentality that I can figure everything out, that any problem I can figure out myself. I don't need anyone else to help me. That I then wouldn't talk about it. I don't need help. And I figured out that because I'm doing that, to do that, you can't receive anything from other people, essentially. And I wasn't accepting love. And talking about problems and stuff like that is a way that you allow people to help you and to show love to you. So that was one of the ways that I figured out that why I wasn't feeling loved. And until you, like I said, you go through the past, you don't even realise what's going on and why sometimes you feel in a certain kind of way. And I think most people probably know at least one sort of thing holding them back, maybe from the past, something that's happened to them that maybe they've built up a bit of a protective way of being, and a bit of an attitude on themselves that prevents them from being hurt. You know, an example is like someone who's been cheated on says, I'll never be in a relationship again. You know, it's not the right way to do something. Just because one person's hurt you doesn't mean everyone's going to hurt you. And you got to look at what's that actually done to you. And, you know, if that was when you were younger or whatever, or there's some other link when you were a kid or whatever, that's something I would say, if it happened to me, I would need to sort out and work through. Because, like I said, you don't realise what's holding you back until you start dealing with stuff that you haven't dealt with. And that's what I was thinking this morning with all this. I was thinking, it doesn't really affect me as much. And it doesn't sort of, what's the word? I don't know. It doesn't sort of matter anymore. It doesn't hold any emotional weight when things happen that make you react, let's say make you upset. It doesn't really matter anymore because you're not upset about it, because you've dealt with it, you've worked through it. But yeah, that's what I reckon I would do if I did it again. I'd sort out that much earlier, because when you feel this great, all you can do is try and look and say, how would we have got here earlier? What was the vital piece that we were missing? And the vital piece is, you're just ignoring your past. You're just ignoring what's happened in life and stuff that's made you feel quite bad. But yeah, anyway, at the gym now, so peace.